We should have known. We all should have known, because what is the best thing to do when you go and have a lovely break on the beach? You find a door that looks like it's forbidden and you open it and you step through. Now let's just calm down, because no one actually knows what is going to happen. But if you enjoy being teased, AEW just teased you right up the 2-9. But my name is Simon Miller, welcome to WhatCulture Wrestling, and welcome to Ups and Downs, which today is focused on the latest episode of All Elite Wrestling's Dynamite. And if you haven't seen it, you ain't gonna believe it. Also, once again, thank you for voting in this week's Retro Ups and Downs poll. And clearly we are still in Royal Rumble season, because you voted in the Royal Rumble from 2005. For that one, I'll see you tomorrow. But for now, let's up those downs to the latest episode of AEW Dynamite. Well, the very first thing that we saw on this week's episode of AEW Dynamite was the #1 contender tag team battle royal. There are worse ways to kick things off. We also had another video from Sammy Hagar saying how much he liked Jay Hagar and Sammy Guevara, and I will never be able to get over that, especially because I bet deep down he doesn't even know what he's saying. We also had the likes of the Jurassic Express, the Dark Order, Private Party, Top Flight, and the Acclaimed, and when they were doing their entrance and doing their whole rap thing, they actually were able to get in a reference to Lil Uzi, who of course I'm sure you've seen, put a diamond right in his head. And anytime we can talk about that, I'm going to appreciate it, because this man putting a diamond in his head. There's also a band called Diamond Head who are amazing. It's like we've come full circle. The Young Bucks had also entered themselves into this, and they were the last entrant here, and they weren't playing around, because they just thrust themselves onto everybody before we'd even heard the bell, and then they were super kicking anybody they could. They were here to kick some ass. Dante of Top Flight and Reynolds of the Dark Order were taken out early, and that's when we were reminded, hey, don't forget, it's a tag team battle royal, so just because one guy goes up doesn't mean the team is eliminated. Both dudes have to be chucked over the top rope, and I really like that. It just smells and feels fresh. There was a big surprise early on as well, because John Silver eliminated Jake Hagar, and somewhere Sammy Hagar was like, no, I can't believe it. So clearly we're still hoping to do something with Johnny Boy. And then there was another shock, because Matt Jackson got back body dropped over the top rope, and Nick was like, well, great. Now you just made my life a hell of a lot harder. From there too, it was just carnage. Luchasaurus was allowed to have his big moment where he destroyed everybody, and you had this really cool shot as he stood in the middle of the ring going, rah, like a dinosaur would do, and there were just bodies everywhere. It was a little bit like an action movie, and he also grabbed Stu Grayson and chokeslammed him from the apron onto the floor. That always looks like it sucks. Sadly, this meant that his eye was off the ball, however, allowing the rest of the Dark Order to tip him over the top rope, and I was like, wow, how did they do that? I thought he was gonna win. He's just so big. Never forget too that when it does come to battle royals, nonsense rules exist throughout all the promotions, which is why about halfway through, out came the Good Brothers, and they just started to eliminate people even though they weren't in the thing. That was Private Party though, which made perfect sense, because of course they're the #1 contenders for their Impact World titles. And then Gallows and Anderson and Nick Jackson kind of started jaw-jacking each other, and Nick wasn't thinking what he was doing. He got thrown over the top as well. This left Darius, Max Caster, and Jungle Boy going against Chris Jericho, Sammy Guevara, and MJF, and I really liked that, because it made the Inner Circle feel like there was some kind of army and they were about to attack. MJF dunked Jungle Boy before Maxwell and Sammy Guevara had a quick stare off, and then there was all this stuff with Max Caster, which actually ended with MJF being chucked out by him, but then Sammy Guevara also went over the top after Chris Jericho ran at all these people teetering on the edge, so it was a little bit like, did Chris Jericho just knock out his friend? Maybe not, but maybe so. Either way, when it came down to it, we did have Le Champion taking on one half of Top Flight, and even though deep down you presumed that Chris Jericho was going to win, there was just enough teasing here to make you believe. Unfortunately, Jericho then did just Judas affect him right in the face, and down he fell to the mat, which does mean at Revolution, we are getting the Young Bucks defending their tag team titles against Christopher Jericho and Maxwell Jacob Friedman. Mark it in your calendars though, because I'm calling it now. This is when we finally get the implosion of the Inner Circle, and as you know, I am still convinced that Maxwell and Sammy are working together, but this was just a barrel of joy. I don't know how you couldn't have enjoyed it. It was just go, go, craziness, craziness, fun, fun, fun. We then had a video package featuring Jade Cargill working out after this, and if you still can't figure out why AEW wants to try and make her a star, You are absolutely crazy. She looks like she could kill us all. And I understand the aesthetic is only half the battle, but it's half the battle. I would rather get halfway through a war instead of entering my first battle and just losing like a bunch of nerds. And then, well, we arrive in a difficult space. So let me just make my overall thoughts clear. I love Sting. I think Sting is one of the greatest people ever, and if he wanted to be my Valentine, I'd be like, Sting, you've made my day. I also think Darby Allin is getting better each and every week, and I think him having the TNT title is absolutely faboo. When it comes to Team Taz as well, we've given them time, and they have grown into this awesome faction, but we are basically just doing the same segment each and every week, and I kind of don't get it anymore. So, down. And this means you already know the deal. Darby Allin and Sting were out for interview when we also learned that next week Darby will be defending his championship against Joey Janela, and just as they were about to speak, Team Taz came on the big screen and was like, look, we can't come in the building this week because last week we tried to kill some guys, and now AEW's like, well, maybe you should stay away for a little bit, but we shall be watching next week, so Darby, you better watch your ass. And Sting was like, well, if somebody else is going to be watching Darby's ass, I'm going to be watching their ass, essentially saying that he has Darby's back and that he's going to look at his ass. And this wasn't bad, and again, teaming Darby and Sting together has worked wonders, but I actually think you would have gotten more out of this if you had just seen them brooding in the crowd or up in the rafters, or just not had them on the show and have commentators go, oh my gosh, they're so good, they're training, they're brilliant. We just need to shake it up a bit, and see, sometimes shaking up things makes you feel good inside. After that, though, was Britt Baker versus Thunder Rosa, and this really did have everything. You had the build, these two had made it personal, you were actually intrigued to see what AEW was going to do. I flippin' love this. It made me all warm and fuzzy in my tum-tum up. Rosa attacked the dentist before the bell because of course she hates her given everything she's put herself through, but Britt Baker also had her own plan, which was, well, within 10 seconds I'm going to try and apply the lockjaw and then you'll be forced to tap out, and she got this close. But this close don't mean nothing. Rosa was just on it after that, and she threw herself into a senton, and even though Britt Baker tried to kick her away, Thunder was like, no, you have made my life a living hell recently, so she grabbed Britt and just chucked her into the apron. She was on her game. She then just kicked Britt for a little bit, but Baker didn't appreciate that, so she hit an air raid crash for a really close near fall. And if you want to tell me this is Britt Baker's best performance yet in AEW, I'm not going to argue with it. It was good. And then just went back and forth with curb stomps and more attempts at the lockjaw. And at one point I was like, man, I tell you, I don't know which way it's going to go, especially when Thunder Rosa applied that omoplata thing. You were like, oh no, Britt Baker's going to tap out. And then Reba or Rebel or whatever the hell we're calling her, she had to get involved now, didn't she? Because she got in the ring when the referee wasn't looking and turned off the turnbuckle pad, and this annoyed Thunder Rosa so much she had to break her submission and chase her away. But you can already see what's coming unless you're Rey Mysterio. That's right, it's back. Not really, his eye's fine now, and good for him, nobody wants to be blind. But Britt Baker pushed Thunder from behind, she cracked her head into the now exposed turnbuckle, down she went. Baker applied the lockjaw, and obviously Thunder Rosa couldn't tap out because she had been KO'd. The referee had to call it. The dentist had won. And I wouldn't have actually minded if Britt Baker had just won here, but I get it, you want to hate her, and now if we are going to build to Britt Baker versus Shida for the world title, that will be cool, although saying that, both of these two are in that women's tournament, so who knows what direction we're going to go in. This was really good stuff though, really, really good stuff, and given that later on AEW also announced that in that women's tournament it is going to be a bunch of American women and a bunch of Japanese women, surely now, if you have been critical of their female talent, everything's about to change. They're about to push it to the moon. And you know how much I like visiting the moon. We then had the best reason for a match ever, because Matt Hardy and Hangman Adam Page were teaming together to take on Chaos Theory, because obviously a couple of weeks ago, Luther and Serpentico, if it is actually Serpentico, you never know, had ruined Negative One's birthday celebrations. And that was disgusting. This is also the kind of wrestling that I'm here for. This was also done so we could continue on this bizarre new relationship between Adam Page and Matt Hardy, because of course Hangman doesn't want to sign a deal, he doesn't want to sign any kind of contract, he just wanted to get change in Hardy's locker room and maybe accept his friendship, and Hardy's all like, yes, I understand, but we still need to have this match. And so like the Chaos Project were just there so they could be beaten up. And they were convincingly beaten up. And Matt did have to tag Adam in at one point because he wasn't doing so well. But as soon as the Cowboy got going, you could just tell that they were in control. I mean, sure, at one point he went for the buckshot lariat, but Luther stopped him. But Hangman was like, okay, well, you just go over there. And he hit it on Serpentico anyway. Or again, we think it's Serpentico, you never know who's under the mask. Do you know what Matt Hardy did here though? He tagged himself in like he'd much done before and got the visual pinfall and then celebrated as if he had picked the perfect time to cash out his GameStop stock. Poor Adam Page was absolutely perplexed by this, especially when Matt Hardy wanted to high-five him, probably because deep down in his gut he was like, why can't I just meet nice people? Why is everyone trying to screw me over? I mean, honestly, the look on his face, Hardy may as well have been trying to communicate in Russian. And I can only presume this is another step in the fall and then hopefully ultimate redemption of one Hangman Adam Page. But I absolutely love it. The Inner Circle is also not in a good way because even though Chris Jericho and Maxwell Jacob Friedman were celebrating here, Sammy Guevara felt very differently. I was like, oh, what a surprise. Mum and Dad have just won again. And Chris was like, look, man, it's for the greater good. What else happened was just collateral damage. And Sammy made a very good point when he was like, well, that always seems to be the way, Chris, now doesn't it? So he stormed off and MJF convinced Chris Jericho to chase on after him, but as soon as that had happened, Maxwell got rid of the cameraman and he had a conversation with the rest of the Inner Circle guys. If you can't see what's about to happen here, well, you don't want to see it, you're only kidding yourself. I know I sound like a broken record, but I'm just doubling down on it. Sammy Guevara and Maxwell Jacob Friedman are in cahoots. And I'm either gonna look like an absolute genius or an absolute moron. That kind of sums up my life in general. Which brings us to the wedding between Penelope Ford and Kip Sabian. Now I'm sure you know if you do watch other episodes of Ups and Downs, I am not a big fan of wrestling weddings. They're always kind of silly, they're always kind of nonsense, and they always kind of leave you scratching your head going, well, I understand what we just achieved. I mean, in the last two, we saw a man shot and potentially be killed, and then I think in the other one, we had a fake lesbian love angle, which still makes no sense. However, with all of that said, this one is getting up. Now look, a lot of this was also ludicrous. Like the minister was James Mitchell, and why you'd ever hire him because the last time he presided over one, someone got shot and almost killed, I don't know. And there was a lot of boobs and penis jokes. So if that's your thing, good for you, you were having a great time. We even played on some tropes here, because once they were wed and Miro was doing his best man speech, he noticed a massive package in the ring. That's not another penis joke, I mean a gift. And when he found out that it was from Chuck Taylor, the guy that he's been abusing for the last couple of weeks, he freaked out thinking there was someone in it. He chucked it out of the squared circle. As it turned out, it's just one big cardboard box. Somehow during all of this though, Charles had managed to tie Miro's foot to the bottom rope, and when he realized this, Chuck was back in the ring and he attacked Kip Sabian. She knocked into Penelope Ford, who went flying into the cake. So yeah, I'm sitting there going, here we go, it's a wrestling wedding. And it got even worse when Kip Sabian accidentally hit Miro, and honestly, the look on his face, it looked like he was going to murder his apparent best friend. And then of course, right on cue, who came out of the cake? If you thought it was anybody else other than Orange Cassidy, you weren't paying attention. Penelope Ford even jumped onto Chuck's back at one point, but ultimately, Orange Cassidy hit the bitch break onto Kip Sabian, and the reason I did like this is because it gave you what pro wrestling should always give you. Over the last few months, the poor best friends have been having their ass whipped, and it's been badness and sadness, but here they stood tall, they got their revenge, and you can't say fairer than that. I bet somewhere in the hospital Trent was shedding a tear. So it all built to a crescendo, and the villains got theirs. And while you never actually need to go out of your way to see this, that was fine. However, there are a couple of points that we do need to mention which changes it a little bit, because one, this would have had far more impact if we had had the whole Charles Chuck as a butler for more than about 3 days, but also, what the hell happened to the bachelor party? Months ago, even Billy Mitchell, he of Donkey Kong fame, turned up and was like, oh man, we're gonna have the best bachelor party ever. And all we got here instead was Miro going, oh yeah, sorry, I didn't do that. I was busy playing Call of Duty. I mean, he didn't say that, but it was implied. That's a little bit confusing, and it's just a little bit unfortunate. So when you think about that, down. We then had highlights of Shaq talking on TNT earlier in the day, where he did admit that he was gonna face Cody Rhodes in a pro wrestling match. And man, that guy is funny. He just talks so matter-of-factly here, and he came up with a bunch of finishing moves. I was chuckling away though, just to let you in on a little bit of a secret. I love Shaquille O'Neal, much like I love Sting. It all built to the announcement though when we were going to have this match, and it's going to happen on Dynamite on March the 3rd. And yes, it's going to be Jade and Shaq taking on Cody and Red Velvet. But I just went, this is so clever. Of course you do it on free TV. You don't hide it away behind pay-per-view and make people put down cash. You allow as many human beings as possible to see it, and I bet it works. And also, I am quite fascinated to see what they're going to do. I bet AEW has quite the little plan. In fact, my feelings for Shaq are so strong, he's getting up. Lance Archer and Eddie Kingston were then trying to kill each other again. This time it was in a lumberjack match, and while they did work their asses off, kind of felt this one was a bit of a swing and a miss. Down. For starters, yes, like I say, it was a lumberjack match. We didn't really have that many lumberjacks, and also many of these guys you wouldn't have recognized unless you're watching a bunch of other shows. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I understand why you could have been confused. People getting involved, and if you only watched Dynamite, you would have been like, well, who on earth is that? The Butcher and the Blade were out there because they'd closed their shop early, and they were beating Lance Archer up before you could say, hey, my friend, how much is a slab of meat? And even Peter Avalon was getting involved, and you can't say he didn't do a good job because it ended with Archer being flung into the ring post, which of course meant Eddie Kingston was able to get in control. Later on, Archer was still able to dive over the top rope onto Kingston and all the lumberjacks, and do not forget, this is not a small man. It was one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. It still wasn't enough though, because Kingston was able to fight his way back into it, especially because at one point the bunny was in there, and she jumped on Lance Archer's back, so if you are keeping up to date with piggy packs, that's 2 for the evening. And then there was this bizarre moment where the Blade set up a table in the ring, and do you know who entered to help Lance Archer out? None other than the tag team known as Bear Country. Now look, I really like Bear Country, but again, if you only watch Dynamite, you've been like, who on earth are these two guys? Although again, don't skip on those dudes, they rock. It did mean all the outside shenanigans were finally balanced out, which allowed Lance Archer to hit the blackout onto Eddie Kingston to not only get the pinfall, but also ensure that 50-50 booking was well and truly on the go. However, Lance wasn't done for the evening, so this did make sense. And yeah, look, it was chaotic fun, but like I say, something about it just didn't really click. You never do that, only idiots do it. I suppose if I was going to sum it up, is that the idea here was to be chaos, but I've seen chaos done better within the realms of AEW. So there you go. We then just got the most out of nowhere reveal, and it was so nuts and it was so crazy. I actually want to thank AEW because I laughed so much water came out of my seeing devices. So thank you very much. Because it was FTR who were absolutely livid that they'd been kicked out of the Battle Royal from earlier, because last week, of course, they'd run amok after Jungle Boy had beaten Dax Harwood, and AEW officials had decided, well, we gotta punish you somehow, and the way we're gonna do that is by kicking you out of this match. And their point is that they think the Jurassic Express had been dirty little snitches, even though I'm 99% sure it happened on live TV, so anyone could have just gone click and seen it, but hey man, you guys know best. The twist though came from nowhere when the camera panned out and sitting off to the side of them was a kidnapped Marco Stunt, like he was all tied to a chair and he had tape over his mouth, but all 3 guys just admitted this and revealed this like it was the equivalent of going to the post office, and that's why I was chuckling away. It was like, well look, you know how life works, you did this to us and now we have to go kidnap someone. It's just the way of things. I'm sure we can sort it out. Also though, surely if what they did 7 days ago was enough to have them banned for a match, now they gotta go to jail. They gotta be arrested, because last time I checked my book, it says, yes, it's right there, kidnapping is against the law. Although look, this has escalated and it was very entertaining. I ain't never gonna get mad about that. Our main event then rolled around, which was a 6-man tag, seeing world champion Kenny Omega team with the Good Brothers to take on the ridiculous partnership of Jon Moxley, PAC and Fenix. And given what they did here, and given the surprise at the end, there's only one thing we can do. Matches my t-shirt golden up. I can't even go through the match because it's one of those situations where I am not going to do it justice. But what I am going to say is Rey Fenix is not of this world. He must have been an alien that was put on this planet to show us what pro wrestling was meant to be. Some of the things he did in this, you will not believe it with your 2 eyes. And AEW knows this too, because it was Jon Moxley that got beaten up for most of this so that he could do the hot tag to Fenix. And once he was in there, I swear, he was just breaking the laws of gravity. What can't he do? He's so quick and he throws himself into everything as if it's the last maneuver he's ever going to do. He did one dive from the ring to the outside, and as ever, he chucked himself so hard, he basically landed in New York. And if your geography's not very good, New York ain't nowhere near Florida. Everyone here was just another level though, including PAC stopping a near fall with a flipping 450, because why wouldn't you do that? And just to cut a long story short, very sadly, it did end with the Good Brothers hitting the Magic Killer and getting the 1-2-3 on Fenix. And if you're now going, well, why didn't anybody else save him? Well, I'll tell you why. PAC was trying to get back in the ring and Kenny Omega just legged it over and V-triggered him right in the face. some of the sequences here, well, let's just be honest. I'm not capable of doing them. You're probably not capable of doing them. These guys are just, well, they are amazing. PAC and Fenix, as well as the Good Brothers, started to brawl afterwards before Lance Archer made his big return, because much like an elephant, Lance Archer never forgets. But this was also done so we could clear the ring, meaning we were just left with Kenny Omega, but also so we were just left with one Jon Moxley. Moxley's face lit up like it was Christmas because he was like, now there's no one to stop me. I'm going to murder Kenny Omega, before a masked man jumped in from the crowd and beat him up. And at this point I was like, well, who the hell is this gonna be? What else could possibly happen? But that's right, my friends. In what could be the first opening of the Forbidden Door, this man took off his garb, and it was none other than Kenta, he of New Japan fame, and he who was about to have a US title match in New Japan Strong with Jon Moxley himself, but clearly he couldn't wait. He hit the go to sleep, and in case you wanted a little bit more, yes, he was basically wearing a Bullet Club t-shirt. Don Callis, who was on commentary, tried to make it out like Kenny Omega him had put this together, but there's a clip on social media afterwards that you can watch right now where Kenta wants nothing to do with Kenny Omega because of course he turned his back on the Bullet Club. I have no idea what is going on, but I do know that in the main event of AEW, we had New Japan guys, we had Impact guys, and I mean, who the hell knows who else is gonna join this party? I'll join, we should all join, it's a flippin' fun time. But honestly, this is so cool, it's so exciting. It also means on this episode, not only did you have Shaq, but you had Kenta, and whoever predicted that. And I don't know what this is going to mean for the wider audience, but I do know that me, Simon Miller, the only person I am involved with, is super duper ready for whatever is round the corner. So nice and simply, this episode of Dynamite, it is getting it up. You should go and watch it, especially this incredible main event. Hook it to my veins and give me more. Now don't forget to leave a comment below and let us know what you think about Dynamite, how we open the Forbidden Door, or is this just one massive tease? Like the video, share the video and subscribe. It's right there, it's free and it will make you feel good. Also we have a website, WhatCulture.com. You can stay up to date with wrestling. You can watch more videos on here on YouTube. Look, there's videos around me right now. And go to social media, search for WhatCulture, you'll find us. Give us a follow. My name is Simon WhatCulture, thank you for joining me as always, and I will see your ass on the next one.